Yeah, so my book actually starts, the book itself was called as Adapt, first step towards, the first step towards success that lasts. The opportunities that the industry had at that time. More importantly, it talks about what I had to understand about myself, and then how to enable and empower a team that combines.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Leaders Talk. I am Andrew Dupy, Chief Relationship Officer here at Leaders Press. And I'm really happy to have with us today Raghavan Venugopal. He is the chairman of Wiwynn, and he is here to talk about his book, to talk about Wiwynn, to talk about how you guys can win. Raghavan, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me on the show.
Our audience will not know, but you are our first interview for the podcast. So you're episode number 1. So congratulations on that achievement. And so let's start this out great and learn about you. What do you do? What is Wiwynn, and what sets you out from everybody else?
Yeah, I think you set it off right. Wiwynn, is a service provider segment. We are a system integrator in the service provider segment. What that means is, you are right now using Zoom, and I am using Zoom as well, and we are on the cloud. And the cloud basically depends on service providers having their infrastructure within the data centers that is making what we're doing right now possible. This is just one application of the cloud. There are so many other applications of cloud that we use on a day-to-day basis. The Microsoft applications being one, the Google applications being another, Apple applications being another. So there's just umpteen number of instances where we come in touch with what the cloud enables us to be today. And what Wiwynn does is a system integrator providing the infrastructure that goes inside the cloud, basically building the hardware, the computers, the big machines, the clusters that is part of these data centers that is making the cloud work. And that's what Wiwynn does. And I'm an executive at Wiwynn. I'm a general manager at Wiwynn with the business unit owner for a certain service provider, a very important service provider. And basically I am responsible for the P&L and everything that comes associated with that business for Wiwynn.
Wonderful. And how have you been able to grow your business? How have you been able to get, it's nice to have a startup. You're in a great niche. It sounds like you're in the right place at the right time in the world, but tell us a little bit about how this got started and how you were able to get it noticed.
Yeah, I think, before getting to Wiwynn, the story itself started much earlier. If you look at the industry of the IT industry and how cloud started, I would say it all started around 2008, 2009, when we not know what it was, when the name cloud was not, championed yet. And we were just building a new kind of hardware that goes into these data centers, which were not just enterprise level. These were called as hyperscale, huge data centers. And that's where my journey or association with the cloud began. And I was at, HPE at that time, the Hewlett Packard Enterprises at that time. And I was just a mid-level manager, learning about, very ambitious, of course, and driven to learn about what cloud is and how I could be a part of it and how I could make it more successful for HPE. And right then, we were innovating and we were creating all these different kinds of new hardware that would make the cloud, make this infrastructure better, more efficient. And then, slowly my journey from there as a mid-level manager became one step further to becoming the next executive, and then to becoming a director of HPE, leading these products that were specifically catered towards the service provider segment. And by that time, the cloud was more mature. This was around 2015 timeframe, 2015 to 2018 timeframe. It was becoming more and more mature, and people started to, in general, started to realize the potential. And clearly, that was becoming in a segment in itself. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the business unit I was driving at HPE decided to close down that segment because HPE's they were looking for more margins versus what we were providing to the business, which was more revenue. So at that time, I was looking for taking all my skill set and applying it in another company that would be a better fit for what I would bring to the table. And that's when Wiwynn was looking for somebody to lead their US operations out of the Northwest Pacific. And, that's when I came to know about them and I joined them. And since then, I've been with them for 5-6 years now, and leading right now, leading their business unit, one of their business units.
Wonderful. And tell us a little bit about how your book integrates with this.
Yeah, so my book actually starts, the book itself was called as Adapt, first step towards, the first step towards success that lasts. So it's goes all the way back in time. It's my journey begins as a mid-level manager, or right before a mid-level manager. It does begin when the cloud, it was in the 2008 to 2010 timeframe. That's basically the timeframe when the book begins. It goes all the way till 2013-14 timeframe. What all happened during that time? What were my learnings during that time? What were the challenges during that time for a mid-level manager? What were the opportunities that the industry had at that time? And more importantly, it talks about what I had to understand about myself, and then how to enable and empower a team that combines all the power of all the team members and passion of all the team members towards a common goal to achieve success. So it's basically, if you strip away all the technological aspects of it, at the very foundational level, it's about the philosophy. What was the management philosophy that was required to bring people together towards that common goal, to achieving success that not only empowered them, but also made them realize their potential, find their purpose, that united with what the organization was wanting. So I think that was what I wanted to bring out from the book, because I thought that was an experience worth sharing that would help others too.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about the process of getting that book out there. I mean, obviously, you told us a little bit about what you do, how you got started with it, where you got to the point where you became an expert in your field. But when did you first get the idea of I'm going to write a book, and what was your initial idea of what that was going to look like when you did it?
Yeah, great question, because this was a lot of I had to answer to myself that the time that I would spend on this is worth it. But that, to turn back the clock a little bit, one thing that I was always good at was chronicling, chronicling the whole path. So by the time I actually finished that phase of my management career, 2014, when I had gone through this first phase, I would say first phase, because, as I would call in the book, there are 3 phases. Adapt is the first phase, evolve is the second phase, and become is the third phase. So this adapt phase, when that was coming to an end and I was looking for another opportunity to take what I had learned during this adapt phase to apply myself to the evolve phase, I had actually gotten a bound copy of everything that I had done through that phase, because I was, like I said, I was really good at chronicling. I was basically to know where I started. Because when you go through these transformational phases, you need to know exactly the baseline. Draw a line in the sand is what we call, and know where you started. where people were at that time, where the team was, where the operational metrics were. So, through those transformational journey, when you get to a certain point where you call it as a destination or an important phase to the next, you understand where you have come from, and you basically call out and say, yes, this has been achieved. So you are ready to go to the next step. So I think that was the first, I would say, spark that enabled me to look back and say, okay, I've chronicled all of this, where the people were and how they transformed, how the team was and how it transformed, where the metrics were and how they transformed. So I had it all chronicled into a bound copy. And at that time, I was, again, that was the spark that basically enabled me, or I would say, first pushed me into thinking, why not a book? Yeah. But then I was not ready at that, immediately I didn't say yes, because again, life is very busy. You have other things going on. So till 2018, which was basically the evolve phase, I still did not felt comfortable that, who am I to write a book? I'm not Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai or Steve Jobs. So why would somebody read a book from, a no-name person? Because I was always an engineering guy, not necessarily involved with networking that comes with marketing. So I was still very doubtful about whether it would be useful for me to spend that much time. But sometime along in that 2018 timeframe, I did realize the importance, because there was something unique about this whole process, what I had. First of all, it comes from a person who is actually going through this journey. It's, usually when you look at management philosophies, management leadership books, we find it is written mostly from a consultant perspective, which is a second-hand perspective, not the first-hand perspective. So when it is a first-hand perspective, and especially coming from a person who is actually going through this journey as the journey is progressing and transforming, that was something unique for me, because, you are telling your story as the story is evolving, as the story is transforming into something better for yourself and for the teams that you lead. So that was very unique. And also from a philosophy standpoint, from a management philosophy standpoint, I felt that there was something unique about what I was trying to do versus what normally the management philosophies were at that time. Again, I went to Rice, did my executive MBA, fell in love with what I learned at Rice. But I also was able to clearly distinguish and discriminate that, there were certain things that I was trying to do that were not necessarily bookish, that was not necessarily from the accepted traditional business philosophies. I was trying to do something different. And with that uniqueness, I thought there was something to be told to the world. And that's how the book idea came out. And especially the coronavirus thing helped a lot, because during that time I was not traveling. So that basically was the final trigger. It's like, okay, I'm not going to get this time anymore. So let me.
That's so true, because I tell you, we had our business grew so much because of the pandemic. People finally had time to actually sit down and put their thoughts down and write. Yeah.
Exactly. And Leaders Press, I think what you have was very unique as well, and how Leaders Press helped during this whole process was phenomenal, because without that kind of support, you have the content, but you don't have the time to write a book, and you have the time to go through an interview like this, but you don't have the to actually sit down and write, because you just don't have, that part of it of your life is already filled up with either work or personal stuff. So I think that also was a huge help. So
that was kind of the next thing I want to pick your brain on. Before you found us, and before you began to go through our process, what was your experience trying to learn about possibly writing a book and going to publishing? Because I know a lot of our listeners are stuck in that area right now. I've got the idea, but I still don't know where I'm going to go with it or how I'm going to get it done.
Yeah, to me, honestly, I didn't do a lot of, see, what I did, I'll tell you what I did.
Okay. Yeah.
What I did was I wrote the first chapter and I
Mhm.
wrote the prelude to the first chapter because I had to first explain to myself, I was my most vocal critic, why do I need to write this book? So I had to first answer those questions. So I had a prelude with just questions that I would answer, that I called it the prelude. It's not part of the book, but I still have that with me. I wrote that first, and
Mhm.
then I had to go through the process of writing, convincing that I could actually tell a story. So I had to write at least the first chapter, and I wrote that
Yeah.
first chapter. Of course, it was not like what it is exactly in the book, but most of, I would say 70 to 80% of what is in the book was what I first wrote, because to convince myself that this is a story that is coming out of my heart, this is something that is real and authentic. So I had to get that done. So more than the technicalities of how to get the book itself published, I had to first convince myself that it is a book that needs to be, it is a story that needs to be told, and
Yeah.
how it needs to be told. And how the book needs to be published, I spent some time, but I found that there were so many aspects of book publishing that at that time I was like very clear that I was not going to have the time to go do all that, because I have a job that is pretty much 14 to 16 hours in a day, and I would never be able to do everything that was required. um, so that's when I basically said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest this with Leaders Press, because they do have all of this, these areas covered that is very important for
Mhm.
getting a good book published. So
Yeah.
that was my, my story.
So I've spoken to a lot of people that are you're a part of the process, and I've spoken to many that are at the very beginning of everything. One of the questions that I regularly get, you went through the ghostwriting process, you wrote your first chapter, so I'm sure you had an idea of what your book was going to look like in your head early on. How different was what got produced from what you had as a kind of a vision of when you just said, I have this idea of a dream of what it's going to be, and then you actually see it in your hand? How far apart was it, if at all?
See, what I found out during the process was, my vision was pretty strong. So,
Right.
which was good, right? I think it was reaffirming that, the money or the time that I was going to spend was actually thought of as a good one to be told.
Mhm.
So that was, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what my vision contained. So my vision, like I said, it was about this management philosophy that made some difference. And the difference was chronicled in actual outputs or metrics that were measured from before and after. So it was a management philosophy at the foundational. So if you divide it into three layers, the foundational layer is that management philosophy. The second layer was the processes and systems that I was using in order to execute or operationalize that philosophy. So that was also chronicled, because those are processes and systems that I'm using. So I had to chronicle that because that is being operationalized in my real life. The third one is the story. The story is the third layer, right? The top layer is the
Mhm.
story. That's the application layer. The application layer was what I wanted to do, was to say that as a story through a protagonist who goes through these challenges, and he experiences these challenges and he overcomes them. In some cases, it's a phenomenal success. In some cases, it's a failure. And he learns from that and he adapts and he moves on. But that's what that story is all about. That story does not go into the details about the processes or the systems or the philosophy in itself, because all that makes the story very um, not easy to consume. So I
Mhm.
wanted for everybody to be easily consume that story. So that was basically at the high level, that was the vision. And then, okay, how do you pepper the story with these challenges,
Mhm.
and what does that story contain? And basically there were these different stages of that story, The first stage is about knowing oneself. The second stage is about knowing one's team. The third stage is about knowing the challenges. Fourth stage is knowing the environment in which you're going to operate. And then the fifth is knowing the destination. And then sixth is knowing how the tools are and whether you've arrived or not. So those were all already in my mind. And I had these instances captured, these different stages captured with sometimes very real instances and stories that happened in my life. And in some cases, I think where the Leaders Press and the wonderful writers and the editors help, were peppering some stories that were not necessarily from me, but it was through those discussions that we had, 12 or 16. I think we had like 12 to 16 interviews before we went and started writing each one of those chapters. But so the framework was there. The framework was there, the vision was there. And then what went into the content from the story perspective, I would say 60% came from my real life experiences. 60 to 65%, the stories that you see in that in Adapt, the challenges through a story format. The rest came out of the discussions that we had and through the wonderful writers, the ghostwriting team that we have at Leaders Press.
Yeah. So having the help of a professional writer and having that back and forth, do you feel that improved the storytelling type of book that you were doing? I mean, being able to speak and talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because see, all said and done, English is not my mother tongue. That was one of the things always in the back of my mind. Although, I have been in English medium schools and right from day one, and even my kids ask me sometimes, they're all born here in the US. They ask me, do you think in your language, which is Tamil, or in English? And I don't know. I think I mostly...
yeah.
But even then, I think having the support of a professional writers who have done this and who give those important feedback and, who shape it in a form that is very easy to consume and where all things fit together is very important. And, it's absolutely very, very important that I was able to have the privilege of working with some of the professional writers.
Well, that kind of leads then to the next step. When you have someone that's helping you get everything through, now you've got your storytelling book, you've got a book that has become successful. Well, I mean, what now after that? What's your next steps? What is your goal with your book now that you have it in your hand?
See, like I said, right? So what I would love to do is take it to the next level. So first, Adapt goes from, if you look at what this journey is, this is a journey about an individual contributor who wants to get into the management path, who knows that he wants to get into the management path, and he just enters into that world of management, and he's a mid-level manager. And then the second phase of it is, when the mid-level manager, transitions over to an executive. He is in the executive branch. He is an L3 or an L4 executive. And then finally, he even takes that next step where he is either the CEO or somebody who is in the CEO's office or the president's office, and who is basically at that level deciding the strategy or what the future vision of a particular organization is going to be. So it's those stages, and each one of these stages are challenging, or each one has unique challenges in themselves that you need to overcome, you need to understand, and you need to enjoy. And convert them into opportunities. So I think those are all my next steps that I see, right? So after Adapt, I want to go with Evolve, because those are different challenges. Just because you went through with Adapt does not mean that Evolve is that basically is the story of, the crux of the story itself is just because you have, been trained to overcome some challenges does not mean that you does not, you still need to be humble, you still need to listen, and you still need to have this attitude of I don't know, because you're stepping into something that is very new. Mm-hmm. And the environment is very different. So you need to go through that again, just like how those different stages were in the previous book. You would have those same stages, but now those challenges are different because the environment in which you're operating is different. The expectations are different. So those are the steps that I would like to take, right? So after adapt, it would be evolve and then to be become. But finally, where I see all of this going is basically creating this into a management philosophy, into something that is more organized, because it's the aspect of all these books is to make sure that that philosophy comes out, that philosophy that is unique and different than what is currently traditional, and how that philosophy, when embraced and when practiced, gives the results that are very non-linear and positive. I think that is what I would love to focus on if I have the opportunity, and God willing.
Awesome. Well, we definitely are here to help you for the next steps. But let's take a look really quickly at Adapt. I want to give you 1 second. Give us a little preview of Adapt for our audience that might be interested in possibly picking it up, doing a read of it. Maybe a little secret that you've got in there just as a hook to bring them in, so that they know what they're in for when they pick it up.
Yeah. So Adapt is a person's journey into management. Getting his feet wet about what this managerial world is, the expectations are, about leading a team, and what it really means to bring together a set of people towards one common goal and achieving that goal. And what are the challenges involved in doing that? And it's told in a story format, so it's a very easy read. Mm-hmm. There are different stages, like I said. Before going through any of these stages, I think the most important stage that each one of what I learned is clearly about knowing myself and knowing what my aspirations are and why am I in this. And clearly understanding and knowing that helps before you take on and going through this transformational journey along with your team. So I think that's what the biggest, the secret, as you mm-hmm. called out, is from Adapt, is to, be able to achieve something. It's going from point A to point B. We all want to be better, and we all want to go from point A to point B to that better destination. How do you get there? And what do you do to get there? And what is better? What do you define as better? So I think it's getting a little bit philosophical at that point, but hey, that's what it is.
Yeah, but hey, philosophy is great, and I tell you, the having a book that can actually help you train your mind to think philosophically and think creatively and adapt and evolve and become, I think, is something that has a lot of demand for. I mean, that's especially coming into the new year. We got 2023 ahead of us. I have a feeling that that's going to be something that people are going to want to read. And if you do, right here down below in the links, we're going to provide you a link to Raghavan's book, Adapt. And Raghavan, how else can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to connect, want to do business with you?
So I'm actually not a big social media person, but the one that I do use is LinkedIn. So if you do want to connect with me, I think that would be a good place to get connected with me. Of course, I do have my Gmail, which I'm sure as part of the book, we would provide those as well. Yeah. And there is a landing page, which would contain what Adapt is about. And, we would have the links for both the LinkedIn and the Gmails.
Wonderful. All right. Well, everything should be down below, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Raghavan Venugopal. He is the author of Adapt. Raghavan, it's been really great to have you. We look forward to you doing really well in 2023 and seeing your book just continue to achieve great success.
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for your wonderful listeners listening in to this show podcast. Thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And ladies and gentlemen, tune in next week for another episode with more fantastic insights.